If your mortgage rate is 4% and the stock market has historically returned around 8%, invest, right? That is the advice you will find almost everywhere. And on the surface, it sounds completely logical. But it is incomplete, and making a decision based on incomplete information, even when it sounds smart, can quietly cost you. That is what this video is about. My name is Mila, and I'm obsessed with the small moves and hidden nuances that build real wealth. Today we are talking about one of the most common financial dilemmas people face once they finally have extra money. Should you pay off your mortgage faster, or should you invest? By the end of this video, you will have an exact framework to know which option is right for your specific situation. Not a general answer, your answer. Because this is not actually a math problem. It looks like one. It gets treated like one. But the real answer comes down to your timeline, your risk exposure, your stability, and your behavior. And once you see that, the decision becomes a lot clearer. Here is where the simple math can break down. Your mortgage rate is fixed and certain. Every extra payment gives you a guaranteed return equal to that rate. No volatility, no bad years. Investment returns are not fixed. The 8% figure people quote is a long-term historical average, and averages can smooth over some very painful stretches of time. Think about 2008. Someone counting on market growth watched their portfolio drop nearly half in under a year. The long-term average still worked out eventually. But if that happened to fall at the wrong point in your timeline, the average stops being the point. Markets move in cycles, not straight lines. And the question is never just what the market returns over 30 years. It is what it returns during the specific years that matter most to you. So now you understand why the standard answer is incomplete. And in a moment, we are going to get into exactly who should invest, who should pay down their mortgage faster, and who should do neither just yet, with a clear framework so you leave this video knowing exactly which category you fall into. But before we get there, we need to talk about why even financially aware people get this wrong in practice. Because the problem runs deeper than the math. Most people who choose to invest over paying down their mortgage do so, imagining a very specific version of how it goes. They picture steady growth, a portfolio that climbs consistently year on year. They see the average return figure, they believe it, and they build their entire plan around it. What they do not picture is the year their portfolio drops 30% right before a major life expense. They do not picture watching their investments fall while their mortgage payment stays exactly the same, fixed, unmoved, completely indifferent to what the market is doing. And they do not plan for how they will actually behave in that moment. Because here is what derails the plan in practice, not the math, but the behavior. People panic sell, people stop contributing, people make emotional decisions in the middle of a downturn and lock in losses they never had to take. The strategy that looked perfect on paper stops working the moment the human element enters the room. And this is the part most people skip when they are running the numbers. They calculate expected returns. They do not calculate expected behavior. So what actually decides whether you should pay off your mortgage or invest? Not which number is higher. There are 7 real variables, and every single one of them matters. First, your mortgage interest rate, because a 3% rate and a 6% rate are not the same conversation. Second, your timeline, because someone with 25 years before retirement and someone with 8 years are making completely different decisions even if everything else looks identical. Third, how close you are to retirement, because the damage a market crash can do becomes far more serious the closer you are to needing that money. Fourth, the strength of your emergency fund, because investing while sitting on a fragile financial base means one unexpected expense forces you to pull from investments at the worst possible moment. Fifth, your income stability, because a volatile income changes how much risk you can genuinely absorb. Sixth, access to tax-advantaged accounts, because the tax efficiency alone can shift the math significantly. And seventh, your behavior, because the mathematically superior strategy is useless if you cannot stick with it when things get uncomfortable. Scenario A. Who should lean toward investing? So we have established that this decision is not about which number looks better on paper. It is about which path is actually built for your life. And that starts with knowing which scenario you are in. So let us talk about the first one. There are 5 factors that put you in scenario A. First, a low mortgage rate, somewhere in the 3 to 4% range. Second, a long timeline, at least 15 to 25 years before retirement. Third, a stable and consistent income. Fourth, A solid emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in cash, not invested, not tied up. Fifth, behavioral awareness. Now, this one is important. If you have been through a market downturn before and you stayed calm and consistent, that counts in your favor. If you are newer to investing and have not been tested yet, that is fine. But you need to go in understanding that markets will drop, sometimes significantly, and your job is to stay the course anyway. The strategy only works if the behavior holds. So, before you commit to this path, commit to that understanding first. If those 5 factors sound like your life right now, meet Sarah. As Sarah is 34 years old. She bought her home for $350,000, put $70,000 down, and took out a $280,000 mortgage at 3.5% over 30 years. She is 8 years in. Her remaining balance sits at around $231,000, with 22 years left. She has a stable job, a consistent income, and 6 months of expenses sitting in a cash savings account. She has a 401k she contributes to but has never maximized. And when the market dropped during COVID in early 2020, she remembers feeling nervous, but she did not touch her investment. She stayed put. They recovered. She kept going. If Sarah sounds like you, this is your scenario. Here is why investing is the stronger move for her. At 3.5%, every extra payment Sarah makes gives her a guaranteed return of 3.5%. That is not nothing. But consider what that same money could do over 22 years in a diversified investment portfolio. Historically, the stock market has returned an average of around 7% annually over long periods. So let us put real numbers on this. Say Sarah has an extra $500 a month. If she puts that toward her mortgage, she would save approximately $40,000 in interest and pay her home off 7 to 8 years early. That is real money and a genuinely meaningful outcome. But if instead she invested that $500 a month over the same 22 years at a 7% average annual return, she would accumulate approximately $312,000. The difference between $40,000 saved and $312,000 built is not marginal. It is structural. And it is driven entirely by the power of compounding over a long timeline. This is why time is the most important variable in this scenario. Not the rate, not the fund. Time. Every year Sarah delays investing is a year of compounding she cannot recover. And at 34, with 22 years ahead of her, time is the one thing she has that cannot be bought back later. The priority within investing matters here too. Before anything else, tax-advantaged accounts. A 401k, a Roth IRA, an HSA, that is where the extra money goes first. Because the tax efficiency changes the math significantly, you are not just earning returns, you are keeping more of what you earn. And over 2 decades, that difference compounds alongside everything else. Here is the real-world context that makes this important right now. After the Federal Reserve aggressively raised interest rates between 2022 and 2023, a lot of homeowners with low fixed-rate mortgages started feeling pressure to overpay because suddenly high-yield savings accounts were offering 4 and 5% and debt felt uncomfortable. But someone like Sarah, sitting on a 3.5% fixed rate, still had a rate low enough that the long-term investing argument remained intact. The discomfort was emotional, not mathematical. And that distinction matters. The one thing that holds this entire strategy together is behavioral consistency. The investor who wins over a long timeline is not always the one who picked the best fund. It is the one who stayed in when things felt uncertain. When the market dropped over 30% in March 2020, it recovered to new highs within months. The people who panicked and sold locked in losses. The people who stayed the course did not. Sarah stayed the course. And 22 years from now, that decision, compounded at 7% on $500 a month, is worth $312,000 versus $40,000 in interest saved. If your foundation is stable, your rate is low, your timeline is long, and you understand that consistent behavior is what makes the strategy work, investing is where your extra money belongs. Not because the math says so on a spreadsheet, because your specific situation makes it the highest value use of your money over time. For you, time and compounding are your biggest advantage. The goal is simple. Use them before they run out. Scenario B. Who should lean toward paying off the mortgage? Now, let us talk about Scenario B, And this one is important because it is where a lot of people who think they should be investing actually belong. And getting that wrong is expensive in a very specific way. There are 5 factors that put you in scenario B. First, a higher mortgage rate, somewhere in the 5 to 7% range or above. Second, a shorter timeline, meaning you are within 8 to 15 years of retirement. Third, an income that is either tighter or less predictable than you would like. Fourth, a lower tolerance for volatility, meaning market swings genuinely affect your peace of mind and your decision-making. Fifth, your cash flow is already stretched, meaning extra money is not abundant and every dollar needs to work with certainty, not speculation. If those 5 factors sound like your life right now, meet David. David is 52 years old. He bought his home for $400,000, put $80,000 down, and took out a $320,000 mortgage. But David bought at a less favorable time. His rate is 6.5%. He is 12 years in, with a remaining balance of around $257,000 and 18 years left on paper. He wants to retire at 65, which gives him 13 years. He has a 401k he has been contributing to consistently, a 3-month emergency fund, and a stable but not high income. When the market dropped in 2022, and it dropped significantly, the S&P 500 fell over 19% that year, David found himself checking his portfolio constantly, losing sleep and second-guessing everything. If David sounds like you, this is your scenario. Here is why paying down the mortgage is the stronger move for David. At 6.5%, every extra payment David makes gives him a guaranteed return of 6.5%. That is not a small number. And unlike market returns, it is certain. Historically, the stock market has averaged around 7% annually over long periods. But that is a long-term average, and David does not have a long-term. He has 13 years. And in 13 years, sequence of returns risk becomes very real. If the market drops significantly in year 10, 11, or 12 of his timeline, right when he is approaching retirement, David does not have the runway to recover. He would be looking at selling into a down market to fund his retirement. That is one of the most damaging financial positions a person can be in. So let us put real numbers on this. David has an extra $600 a month. His current monthly payment is $2,023. If he adds that $600, bringing his total payment to $2,623 a month, he pays off his $257,000, remaining balance in approximately 11 years and 8 months instead of 18 years. That means he saves over 6 years of mortgage payments and pays approximately $70,000 less in interest. More importantly, he walks into retirement at 65 with his home fully paid off. No mortgage payment. His monthly expenses drop significantly. His cash flow opens up completely. That is not just a financial win. It is a structural change in how his retirement feels and functions. Now, compare that to investing that same $600 a month over 13 years at a 7% average annual return. He would accumulate approximately $152,000. On paper, that looks larger than $70,000 saved. But remember, that 7% is not guaranteed. In 2022 alone, the market lost nearly 20%. And David already showed us how he behaves when that happens. He loses sleep. He second-guesses. The strategy that looks better mathematically falls apart behaviorally. And a strategy that falls apart under pressure was never actually the right strategy for that person. Here is the deeper truth for people in David's position. Paying off your mortgage aggressively is not the conservative choice. It is the intelligent one. It gives you a guaranteed return equal to your interest rate, it eliminates your biggest monthly obligation heading into retirement, and it removes one of the most persistent sources of financial anxiety a person can carry. The peace of mind that comes with owning your home outright is not a soft benefit. It is a real financial advantage, because a person with no mortgage payment needs significantly less income to live comfortably in retirement. For David, and for you, if this is your scenario, stability is not settling. It is strategy. The goal is not to squeeze out the highest possible return on paper. The goal is to arrive at retirement in the strongest possible position. And for you, an owned home, $70,000 in interest savings, and 6 fewer years of housing debt gets you there far more reliably than chasing market returns on a shortened timeline. For you, certainty and cash flow are your biggest advantage. Build toward them deliberately. Scenario C. Who should not go aggressive yet? Now let us talk about scenario C. And this one might be the most important scenario in this entire video because it is the one nobody talks about. Every piece of mortgage versus investing advice assumes you are starting from a stable foundation. But what if you are not? What if the real problem is not which option to choose, but that you are not yet in a position to meaningfully choose either? There are 5 factors that put you in scenario C. First, little to no emergency fund, meaning less than 1 month of expenses saved in accessible cash. Second, existing high-interest debt, credit cards, personal loans, or anything carrying an interest rate above 7 or 8%. Third, an unstable or inconsistent income, meaning your monthly cash flow is unpredictable. Fourth, inconsistent or non-existent investing, meaning you have never built a steady contribution habit. Fifth, financial stress that is already present, meaning money decisions feel reactive rather than intentional. If those 5 factors sound like your life right now, meet Maya. Maya is 38 years old. 9 years ago, she was working a stable W-2 job, had good credit, and qualified for a strong mortgage rate. She bought her home for $275,000, put $55,000 down, and locked in a $220,000 mortgage at 3.5% over 30 years with a monthly payment of $988. A few years later, she left her job to go self-employed. And while her business has had good moments, her income has never been as predictable as it was before. Life shifted. The financial pressure built up around her. Today, her remaining balance sits at approximately $176,000, with 21 years left. And here is the part that matters. Maya has the exact same mortgage rate as Sarah, 3.5%. On paper, she looks like she belongs in scenario A, but the picture underneath tells a completely different story. Maya has $11,000 in credit card debt spread across 2 cards at an average interest rate of 21%. She has $800 in savings. Some months her income is strong, other months she is covering gaps. She contributes to investments occasionally, but not consistently. And most months she feels like she is running to stand still. If Maya sounds like you, this is your scenario. Here is the hard truth. Maya does not have a mortgage versus investing problem. Maya has a financial foundation problem, and trying to optimize an unstable system does not fix it. It just adds complexity to chaos. Let us look at what the math is actually saying in Maya's situation. That $11,000 in credit card debt at 21% is costing her approximately $2,310 every single year in interest alone. Just in interest. That money is not building anything. It is not growing anything. It is disappearing quietly every year, while Maya is debating which wealth-building strategy to choose. And that 21% interest rate is nearly 6 times what her mortgage is costing her and 3 times what the stock market has historically returned on average. There is no investment strategy on the planet that reliably returns 21% annually. So the highest return move available to Maya right now is not in the stock market. It is eliminating that debt. And without an emergency fund, with only $800 sitting between her and an unexpected expense, any progress Maya makes is fragile. 1 car repair, 1 medical bill, 1 slow month of self-employment income, and she is back on the credit card. She is not building forward, she is running a cycle. Extra money goes towards something productive, then an emergency pulls it right back out. That pattern does not get solved by choosing the right investment account. It gets solved by building a buffer that makes the cycle stop. Now, here is what makes Maya's situation particularly important to understand. She has the same mortgage rate as Sarah. The same opportunity theoretically exists for her, but she cannot access it yet, because the obstacle sitting in front of it is costing her more than the opportunity could return. You cannot step into scenario A while scenario C is still active. The foundation has to come first. The path forward for Maya is clear, and it is sequential. Step 1. Eliminate the high-interest debt first. Every available dollar goes there. Paying off $11,000 at 21% interest is the equivalent of earning a guaranteed 21% return on that money. Nothing else in this conversation comes close. Step 2. Build a starter emergency fund of at least 1 to 2 months of expenses before anything else moves. Step 3. Stabilize the income as much as possible and build a consistent savings habit. Step 4. Once the high-interest debt is cleared and the buffer is in place, then and only then does the mortgage versus investing conversation become genuinely relevant for Maya. This is not a permanent position. It is a starting point. And the distance between where Maya is now and where Sarah is, investing confidently with a long runway ahead of her, is not that far. But you have to walk it in the right order. The goal right now is not to grow wealth. The goal is to stop losing it quietly while looking for ways to build it. For you, the first move is not forward. It is foundational. Get the foundation right, and every other decision in this video opens up for you in a way it simply cannot right now. The emotional reality. So now you have seen the three scenarios. You have seen the math behind whether to pay off your mortgage or invest. You have seen the variables, and if you are honest with yourself, you probably already know which one you are in. But before we get into exactly what to do next, there is something that needs to be said, because it is the thing that will determine whether whichever path you choose actually works in real life. Here is the truth that most finance content glosses over. Knowing the right strategy and being able to execute the right strategy are two completely different things. And the gap between those two things is where most people quietly lose money they never had to lose. Not because they chose wrong between paying off their mortgage or investing, but because they chose right and then could not hold the line when things got hard. And here is what makes this important. That behavioral trap exists on both sides of this decision. It is not just an investing problem, it is a human problem. And it shows up differently depending on which path you are on. If you are in Sarah's position, investing with a long timeline and a low mortgage rate, the trap is panic. Think about what it actually feels like to open your investment app on a random Tuesday and watch a number you've been building for years drop $20,000 or $30,000 in a matter of weeks. Your mortgage payment is still due. Your bills have not changed. But that number keeps falling. That is the moment the strategy gets tested. And that is the moment most people fail it. Dalbar, a research firm that has studied investor behavior for decades, found that over a 30-year period, the S&P 500 averaged 10.35% annually, but the average real investor only earned 3.66% over that same period, nearly a 7 percentage point gap every single year for 30 years. Not because the market failed them, because they panicked, sold low, bought high, and let emotion run a strategy that only works when logic does. And 2008 showed us exactly how that happens. When the market fell nearly 57% from its peak, people pulled out at the bottom and watched the recovery happen without them. But now, let us talk about the behavioral trap on the other side. Because if you are in David's position, paying down your mortgage aggressively, there is a pattern that quietly derails people even after they do everything right. David follows the plan. He makes the extra payment. At 62, he pays off his mortgage 3 years ahead of schedule. That $2,623 a month he was paying, the regular payment plus the extra $600, is now free. And this is the moment that matters most. Because that freed up cash flow was always supposed to go straight into aggressive investing for his final years before retirement. But for a lot of people in David's position, that money does not make it there. The lifestyle quietly expands to meet it. A nicer car, more travel, small upgrades that feel earned after years of discipline, and by 65, the investing that should have happened in those final 3 years did not. The mortgage is gone, but the wealth that was supposed to replace it never fully materialized. Paying off the mortgage was not the mistake. Losing the freed up cash flow to lifestyle after was. And then there is Maya. And Maya's behavioral trap might be the most relatable one of all, because it is the one that looks the most like productivity. Maya knows her foundation is unstable. She knows the credit card debt is there. She knows the emergency fund is almost non-existent. But instead of confronting those things directly, because that is uncomfortable and unglamorous work, she finds herself deep in the mortgage versus investing debate, researching strategies, watching videos, feeling like she is doing something financially intentional. But she is not solving the actual problem. She is using a more interesting question to avoid a more urgent one. That is financial procrastination dressed up as planning, and it costs her every month she stays in it. This is why behavior has to be part of the decision before you make it, not a factor you consider after things go wrong. Because the behavioral trap is different depending on where you are. For Sarah, it is panic. For David, it is lifestyle creep after the win. For Maya, it is avoidance. And all three feel completely reasonable in the moment. That is what makes them traps. The honest question is not which strategy returns more on a spreadsheet in a perfect world. It is which version of this decision, paying down your mortgage or investing, you will actually maintain through a market crash, through a job scare, through a year where everything feels uncertain. And more than that, are you being honest about which behavioral pattern you are most vulnerable to right now? That is the real layer underneath this decision. And it is exactly what the framework we are about to walk through is designed to help you see clearly. The decision framework. So now you have the 7 variables. You have seen yourself in one of 3 scenarios, and all of that information has one job: to get you to a clear decision. So here is how you use it. If you are Sarah, meaning your mortgage rate is below 4%, your timeline is 15 years or more, your income is stable, your emergency fund is solid, and your behavior is steady, your biggest advantage is time. Time is the one variable that cannot be recovered once it is gone. And with a long runway and a low rate, compounding works harder for you than any extra mortgage payment ever could. Your move is to invest. Start with your tax-advantaged accounts first. Your 401k, your Roth IRA, your HSA. Max those before anything else. Then direct additional extra money into a brokerage account and let it compound over time. Stay consistent no matter what the market does in any given year. That is the whole strategy. If you are David, meaning your mortgage rate is 5% or above, your timeline is shorter than 15 years, your cash flow is tighter, and market volatility costs you sleep. Your biggest advantage is certainty. A guaranteed return equal to your interest rate, reduced monthly obligations heading into retirement, and the peace that comes with owning your home outright. Those are not small things. Your move is to pay down the mortgage consistently every month, and the moment it is cleared, every single dollar of that freed up cash flow goes straight into your 401k, your Roth IRA, and a brokerage account. That second step is not optional. It is the other half of the strategy. If you are Maya, meaning you have high interest debt above 7 or 8%, less than 1 month of expenses in accessible savings, or an inconsistent income, your biggest advantage right now is clarity. The clarity that comes from knowing exactly what is draining you and stopping it. The mortgage versus investing question is not your question yet. Clear the high interest debt first, build the buffer, stabilize the foundation, then come back to this decision with a base that can actually support whichever path you choose. And if you sit between 2 of these, split. Weight your extra money toward whichever of your 7 variables is weakest right now. That is your honest starting point. That is the framework. The variables told you where you stand. The scenarios showed you what that looks like in real life. And this is what you do with it. As we come to the end of this, I want to leave you with something that goes a little beyond the numbers. This was never really about mortgages and investments. Those are just the vehicles. What this was actually about is building a financial life that is stable enough to give you options, and honest enough to reflect where you actually are right now, not where you wish you were. The people who get this wrong are not the people who chose investing over mortgage payoff or mortgage payoff over investing. They are the people who made the decision based on what sounded smartest at a dinner party or what the loudest voice on the internet told them to do, without ever stopping to ask, does this actually fit my rate, my timeline, my foundation, and my behavior? That question is unglamorous. It does not make for an exciting headline, but it is the question that separates people who build real wealth from people who stay busy without actually moving forward. Sarah is not winning because she invested. She is winning because she invested in a way that fits her life. David is not winning because he paid off his mortgage. He is winning because he chose certainty at a point in his timeline where certainty is the smarter asset. And Maya, when she clears that debt, builds that buffer, and stabilizes her foundation, will not be behind. She will be ready, and ready is more powerful than rushed. You do not need the perfect strategy. You need the right strategy for you. And now you have the tools to find it. If this video helped you get clear on your decision, I would love for you to share it with someone who is sitting with the same question. And if you want to go deeper on building a financial life that actually works for your specific situation, subscribe and come back, because that is exactly what we do here. And always remember, luxury is easier when your money's organized. I will see you in the next one, and I love you.